All right, so now we're at chapter 2 of the book. So what are we going to get out of this? This chapter really is, I think the most important thing we get out of this is the idea of stakeholders. Because remember, chapter 1, we had this idea of being able to spot what the issue was, but then having to understand who's being impacted by the issue. And those people are the stakeholders. And understanding the idea that the stakeholders exist in an environment. Now, as I said in chapter 1, reiterated here, we're talking about business entities generally here, and the most important thing to take away from that is the idea of respect. Okay, so what do we mean by respect? We mean that idea that the business entity that we're going to talk about, or your business, okay, it's as if you had another child, another member of the family, in-law, outlaw, whatever. Okay. Think about it, okay? For every business that you've ever heard, it has its own social security number. It has its own checking accounts. It buys and spends its own money. It makes its own stuff and it sells its own stuff. It transports its stuff, okay? So these, stuff being goods and services. So very much, okay, you have to think of a stakeholder, although they may be, we would call it a juridic entity. In other words, formed by force of law. It's a corporation or partnership. Okay, it very much has the overtones of a biological organism. It's going to exist in an environment. It's going to react to that environment. It's going to change that environment, but it's self-contained. In other words, it's taking in fuel, energy. It's doing something with it, and it's putting something out. Okay. So with that said, stakeholders. Who are these individuals, be they people or corporations, etc.? Okay? The first thing to realize about stakeholders is there can be many subsets of them in any given situation. Okay? You don't necessarily look at the stakeholders and say, aha, those are the stakeholders, we're done, we're out the door. Okay? A given situation, okay, with a given issue is going to have a certain subset of stakeholders. But the same situation with a different issue will have a different set of stakeholders. What do I mean by that? Think of it, you're presented with either a case study or a real life situation where a company is losing money because of a supply chain issue. Okay? If your focus, you're in the operations department, your focus is on the supply chain, then your stakeholders are the individuals and companies that are supplying materials to the company for the purpose of the company creating whatever widget it creates, okay? And it may be the transportation people involved in that, the people that maintain the equipment that's used in that, or design the equipment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, okay? Take the same situation though, right? We're concerned about the amount of money we're making by what we're doing, okay? But I say now the issue is more finance-oriented, okay? That we are unable to secure lines of credit, or that the way that we're calculating our earnings before interest and taxes is not accurate, or the tax rate's not accurate. Now, the subset of people that will be relevant to that would be your finance people. It might be your marketing people, because they might be telling you that you have to build a certain product a certain way, and that's costing you a certain amount of money, okay? And they might be part of that group that you look at. So it's how you frame the issue that's going to say these are the relevant stakeholders. And given that any situation has multiple issues, there's always multiple sets of stakeholders. Okay? Okay. Stakeholders also exist on a spectrum. Okay? Now, what do I mean by that? You could be a very important stakeholder, or you could be a very unimportant stakeholder, but you're still a stakeholder. Right? So think of it this way. Do the supply chain again. Okay? When we're making a given widget. Okay? Now, you could be a supplier that is literally the supplier that I buy from. Okay? You're a stakeholder. Okay? But at the same, maybe there's a component in that piece that I buy that's made by another person or an entity, okay, that is equally important. They're also a stakeholder. Okay? But maybe it's with a little s versus a big S. Okay? So we say that there's a spectrum that we operate under. And how do we place a stakeholder on that spectrum? Well, the book lays out several things, and let's go through them. First is remoteness to the relevant issue. In other words, like take our supply chain issue, right? You could be close, you're the guy I'm buying it from, or you could be distant. You could be somebody who's manufacturing some small component that goes from the piece that I buy from the guy that I buy from. Okay, so you can be close or far away, right? Okay. Another, geographically, you could be far away. You could be within the context of what it is you manufacture. It's a small component, so you're further away. Okay, all right. Input to the solution. You might be or the person we're looking at, stakeholder, might be the person that can solve it, or the entity that can solve it. Okay, my supplier is the guy who could get me enough so that I could always make enough widgets. Right? Now they'd be very significant. Their input is significant. Let's say, however, that we make transmissions, right? And so we're buying our transmissions from a given manufacturer, okay? And there's oil in the transmission, right? Well, the oil that goes in there might be from any one of 6 manufacturers. So the solution that I need more transmissions, right, it's fairly limited as to what oil they're putting in, because they could be getting in from 1 of 6. It really doesn't matter, okay? I just need the transmission, okay? So it's how significant that person is, or that entity is, to the problem I've got to solve, okay? The liability. Let's say things go wrong, okay? If things start going wrong, my immediate supplier's got a lot of liability. I'm going to go right after him, right? I'm going to sue him. But the guy that manufactures the small little gear that's in the very back of the transmission, okay? I'm not going to be suing him. He's got very limited liability, so he's less of a stakeholder to me, right? Immediacy. Immediacy, going to that idea, whatever happens, it impacts on that person immediately, right? Hence the expression immediacy, okay? So, if the impact is now versus 6 months from now, well, they're a stakeholder. If I tell my supplier, don't you send me another transmission and they're going to go out of business next week, well, then there's a big stakeholder. If I tell them, don't send me any transmissions, and they've got a whole bunch of them, they're just going to sell them to GM. Well, the impact is later. Is the impact to them real or theoretical? In other words, if I say to them I don't want those transmissions, does he have an immediate, real problem? A whole bunch of them on the shelf. Or is it just a theoretical one? Well, you know, I was going to build 18 of them. Only got 1, so I'm not going to build the other 17. Okay? So how real is the impact? How theoretical is it? Now, realize you can, this one you can slide a lot. Think of it if you were a manufacturer of aircraft, right? And you have 100 aircraft you order. And now you're going to sit there and say, I don't need the last 50. Well, they might have based their projection of their income, your Boeing, on having those other 50. So now there's going to be a breakup fee or whatever. Although it's theoretical, I'm going to build the 50, the impact could be very real. So in this one, you really have to, it sounds like a pun, you have to look at what's going on, right? And whether or not the impact, okay, is actually something that is going to impact on the company, or is it just theoretically it's going to happen at some point in time. Is the impact, whatever it is, critical or insignificant? Okay, and this goes back to that idea of you're Boeing and you're manufacturing the aircraft. It may be critical because it could affect their bottom line very, very quickly. Or because it's so far out in the future, in other words, they weren't going to build those aircraft for 30 years. It could be virtually insignificant because it hasn't even shown up on their books yet. It's just out there. Okay? So again, when you're defining who the stakeholder is, right, and you're saying to yourself, is this person a stakeholder with a big S or a little s? You realize you operate on a spectrum. And they could be extremely remote, right? They're way distant because they make that little gear that goes inside, right? And they're way, way out there, right? But let's say they're the only one that makes that gear. Now they're significant. And if the gear fails, the whole transmission blows apart. Well, they're significant. But you know what? Your decision not to buy those transmissions that haven't been built yet, that nobody cared about, it maybe later, it could be only theoretical, and it could be insignificant. So, it's which, not that you're going to cherry pick, but you have to realize that as you make the argument that somebody is a stakeholder, you're going to position them and say, this is why they're a stakeholder, with the recognition that somebody could come back at you and say, no, they're not, and these are the reasons why. Okay? So very much we always analyze both the positive and the negative. Once we make a choice, we just remember the negative because it's going to come back against us. Okay? Now, what do we know about these stakeholders? First off, their viewpoint is going to shape what they do, right? Because they're a living, breathing organism, right? And what factors do we consider? Well, there's economic, the money, right? There's ethical, we're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. There's legal, we're going to get in trouble or not. And then there's philanthropic. In other words, are we being good as we do it, right? Are we socially responsible? Are we doing some good for society? Are we giving back to society? Okay? So there are this, once you've identified who the stakeholders are, there could be subsets of them, right? And what their impact, how they're impacting their environment, realize that there are drivers on this organism. Okay? Just as we said, a biological organism looks to be able to grow and reproduce and have other little biological organisms around. A company tries to make money. It should try to do the right thing and live up to the legal requirements of its organizations placed under it and help society. Okay. Continuing on though, let's look at some motivations here. And these aren't the only motivations. Every organization has many motivations. But we'll just pick one to look at. That's social responsibility, because this is something that every company now is trying to be, and rightfully so. The objective of social responsibility is to contribute to the common good, right? We could substitute anything here if you want to be, they want to be economically responsible. In other words, we're going to contribute to the bottom line. But we're going to be socially responsible, contributing to the common good. What's their foundation? That's the thing that you always ask. In order to achieve this result, what does my stakeholder have to do? Their foundation is they're going to have effective, ethical, and legal governance on all levels, right? If I change this, a stakeholder motivation, let's say it was economic, they want to contribute to the bottom line, the foundation now is going to have to be effective financial governance on all levels, okay? So that's why we say, you look at their motivation, and you're going to ask yourself two things. What are they trying to do, and what's it based on, okay? And the last thing to realize is this, and this goes back to my beginning discussion when we said who are stakeholders, and stakeholders being a living, breathing organism. Any living, breathing organism, once you inject them into the environment, they inevitably change the environment, right? It wasn't the same before you got there, okay? If that's the case, okay, then a very complex feedback loop starts happening, and that's the following. That the organism, the stakeholder, is going to change their environment, but learn from the changes. They're also going to respond to the changes, and they're going to assess their position. So they're constantly doing all these things, right? Because we said the world is dynamic. They're changing, but they're assessing. They're responding. Yep, they change again. But now they might go over it. They're going to learn from what happened. They're going to respond to it. They're going to reassess it, change it again. So you could be going this way, or it could change it just in response to something, and then respond to it and change it again. So the idea going forward, right, this is given in all business, is that idea of dynamism going on. It's a hugely dynamic environment, especially when you're doing ethics in the law, because the law is obviously something that's constantly evolving. And ethical guidelines, although you can lay out the base of them, how they apply to a given situation and how the facts change, okay, is going to change how you do your ethical analysis. Okay, so that's the idea of stakeholders and what their drivers are, what their motivations are. And the big thing to take away from this, beyond the motivations, etc., is the idea of the spectrum. Okay, a good word for you always to use. That along this, the spectrum, the person is a stakeholder. Okay, they may be a strong stakeholder, a weak stakeholder, a major stakeholder, whatever you want to put it. But you want to, you just don't want to say out there, oh, they're a stakeholder. I'm done with this. I can walk away. Okay, because there's going to always be somebody who wants to argue the point with you. Okay, so that's chapter 2. Now we're going to move on to chapter 3.